They said they were deciding in their June meeting. Period. Following up now. Can anybody hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yes.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Who am I talking to? I'm Kevin.
I'm David Velez. How you doing?
David, good to meet you.
Good to meet you as well.
We'll give a couple people, I'm not sure how many people are coming, give them a little bit of time to jump on. Let me ask you this, since I can see you here. When can you see that slideshow when I go to there?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll give everybody a couple minutes here, and then we'll get to it.
Perfect.
David, Nicole, when you get to it, if you can get rid of your black screen, that would be great to talk to you, see who I'm talking to. I'll give you a second.
My video seems to be down today. Otherwise, I normally would.
Okay, well, that's fine. Audio helps. David, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you see me, or you're not able to see me?
Sorry, there you are. Oh, I've got two Davids.
Okay. Yeah, I'm update my name. I think I'm only showing as iPhone.
Yeah, that's okay. I see David Davis. Hey, bud.
Hey, I'm here. I'm working from home looking like a bum today. So.
No, that's all right. I'm working from home looking like I'm about to go play golf.
There you go.
So that's okay. That's all right. And who do I have here from the Moon Squad? Is that you?
Me, Quinn, and Brian's on too, yeah.
Brian doesn't want to listen to me ever.
No, it's me, Cupcake.
Hey, buddy. Long time no see.
No doubt, brother.
Cool. So let me start with my Davids and Nicole. Fill me in a little bit. So David Velez, you newbie doing this a little while. Have you hosted any open houses? Fill me in.
I'm a newbie. So this is my first month. Haven't hosted any open houses.
Okay.
I've done real estate 101. So yeah, just starting things off here.
Okay, perfect. David Davis, how about yourself? Fill me in. I know we've met, but fill me in
Yeah.
Timeline. Refresh my memory.
Yep, Brian hired me last September. Been working with him since then. Try to target about 6 open houses a month minimum.
Okay, good.
Most months I've been hitting closer to 10,
That's
but
good.
the past 2 have just not as much. I've been working with active buyers, but
Okay.
I'm at the point now I'm pretty comfortable hosting my own open houses. And
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, if you've been doing give or take 6 months for the last handful of months, you're doing pretty good. What's your experience so far? How you feeling about it?
good, lots of leads, not
Okay.
as many. What do you call when you actually convert the lead? But we're getting better at it.
Okay. Have you closed anybody from an open house yet? Or
Yeah,
done-
one just 2 weeks ago was my first.
Got
Yeah.
it. So that's amazing. And what's your pipeline? Do you have a few people that you're kind of staying in touch with, working with from the open houses?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the one that I felt really good about last week told me that she found something through some like a Redfin agent or something and just got that one done. So that one's off. I've got another guy I'm following up with who came through an open house who's looking for his mother who's looking to move to the city from out of state.
Okay.
I try to pitch myself that, I've helped multiple people move to Chicago from out of state, on the buy side and like the renting side. And I'm, happy to help walk through that. So
Okay.
following up with him.
So since
The house one so far.
So not to put you on the spot, but thanks for sharing. So the person that ended up kind of going with a different agent there, had you gotten out face to face with them after the open house, or you had just been talking to them? Fill me in on that one.
Just texting. So that open house was the weekend before this last one.
Yep.
It was like, I think Saturday, and we made plans to follow up on Monday. I did. She let me know that she was traveling on Tuesday, but she would follow up with me in a few days. I texted her again. Didn't hear back from her, and then texted her again just yesterday saying, hey, like, you still need help with your home search. Let me know. Happy to help. And she let me know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's challenging. Sounds like you did a pretty good job there of doing your best to stay in front, to create another face to face. Sometimes there's, sometimes you can be like, there's something I could have done better, but sometimes they're like, no, I actually think I did a pretty good job. It's just, you can only control so much.
Sure.
Nicole, fill me in on your situation and your open house history.
Sure. So I am a new agent, completely new to the industry, about maybe at this point, a month and a half, 2 months in. I have hosted a handful of open houses, just kind of sporadically when I've been able to. So I want to say maybe about 6 or so.
Okay.
Most of them have been in the city, and one was out in the suburbs. For the most part, everyone has come through with agents or said they have. And so even after I follow up, if they provide like their contact information, I always follow up immediately after the open house, mostly by text, just asking if they have any questions.
Yep.
And they've either get no response. I've had people say, this is the wrong number. And in some cases, they really do have questions and they've reached out to their actual agent.
Okay. All right. So you've got a few under your belt.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, that helps. Obviously, Brian, Quinn, feel free to chime in on anything. You guys know what you're doing, but happy to pick your brain on some things as well. So, okay, cool. I will, I'll get into this here and I'll kind of bounce back and forth between sharing the screen and not. So, let's think about, before we even get started, right? Like, what is the point of an open house, right? The point of the open house is to get leads. That's the point of the open house, meaning that your property is going to sell, or it's not going to sell, or it's going to sell via private showings, or it could sell by somebody coming to the open house, all that good stuff, right? But like, as an agent, if you're doing an open house, pretty much you're doing it to get leads. Now, sometimes you combine the two. You're appeasing your seller, right? Like when we do open houses for our listings, I don't always really feel like doing one, but I'm doing one to appease my seller, but I'm really doing it to get leads. So that's the simplest thing. Don't forget why you're doing that. The other thing, and I'll kind of flip back for this for just a second, is you want to be pretty aware of kind of what the conversion rate is. So like on our team, that we found that about 5% of the attendees of the open houses that we host end up buying a place with us. Okay, it's about a total 5% conversion rate. And so if you just know a little bit about conversion rates, cold leads, like pure internet leads, convert at like 2%, give or take. Okay. So it's a little bit better than like a command lead or a pure cold lead kind of thing. Your sphere converts at a ratio of about 6 to 1. Okay. So for every 6 people that you have in your database, that you run a perfect 33 touch, right? If you've got 100 people in there, right? 100 divided by 6, that's like 15 deals. Okay. So, your sphere converts at a much higher rate. Okay, so open house leads are like certainly not as good as a direct handoff of like, hey, work with my sister's friend, you know, and it's better than a cold lead if you nurture it properly. Okay, so then if you're starting to just do a little bit of math, right? If you do an open house and you have five, you have 5 people that come in that give you quality information, right? They actually fill in their information. That's a pretty good open house because you've got 5 people to follow up with, right? So then if you say, all right, if I do 20 open houses, okay, which is if we work 40 weeks a year, right? Nobody works 52 weeks a year. You have holidays and travel and this and that and all the stuff, right? So if you do 40 weeks a year, that's only an open house every other week, right? So it's not that many. 20 for the year is not that many open houses. If you do 6 a month, like David's trying to do, right? That's awesome, right? That's 72 for the course of the year, but you know, round down, maybe you do 50 or 60 kind of thing. So anyways, if you get 5 good leads or 5 just not even good, just contact information, you do 20 open houses, that's 100 leads, right? Then if you say, all right, if I convert at a pretty high level, right? If I have 100 leads, I'll sell 5 people homes. Okay, so 5%, right? Then if you kind of work through like what's an average commission, and like don't even get into like whether you're on a team or this or that, like kind of like keep it simpler, right? But if your average price point in Chicago is, you know, kind of in our office is around $400,000, okay, average commission is 10K. So for each one you do, you're going to bring in about $10,000, give or take, and so that's $50,000, right? So then if you say, all right, how much time does it take me to do 20 open houses? Okay. By the way, open houses don't have to be 2 hours long. They can be an hour and a half and things like that. But let's say, you know, if we did 20 open houses, if it was 2 hours each, that's 40 hours, bump it up a little bit. Let's just say it's 50 hours of work to do 20 open houses, give or take, right? Well, you know, would you, if you take, you know, $50,000 of commission divided by 50 hours of work, that's $1,000 an hour. Okay. So most people would say, hey, would I be happy getting paid $1,000 an hour? Or let's just be less optimistic, call it $500 an hour, right? People would say yes. And the reason why I'm saying that is so many people do, you know, 3 open houses in a month, or they do 2 in a weekend and this and that. And they're like, I'm not that good at them, or I'm not converting at a very high rate. Well, you shouldn't convert at much more than 5%, really. Okay. But would you be happy making between $500 and $1,000 an hour? I think you would, right? So you got to kind of get your head wrapped around from the start. Like, it is a numbers game. You got to do a lot of them because it takes a little while to kind of perfect your skills. You have to stay after the follow up. But if you do, a 5% conversion rate is pretty good, and your hourly rate is pretty high, right? And then of course it gets better than that because you get referrals and stuff like that. So anyway, hang in there. It's not a short term thing. So all right, let me reshare this here. All right, so I put this PowerPoint together, and I am not a skilled technician, so bear with me on some of my cheesy graphics and things like that. Okay, so one thing right off the bat is you also have to get the mentality that open houses are just not about getting buyers, okay? It absolutely is about getting sellers as well. So if you have a head of a team, a rainmaker kind of, they should be doing open houses too if they want to grow their business, because you don't want to think about just like, hey, this is about getting buyers. Yeah, maybe you will, right? And if you personally don't work with many buyers, that's fine. You know, you work with them, you get buyer leads, and if you have a team like I do, you can give those leads. But you can get a lot of seller leads. So first of all, you got to get in the mentality. It's just as much about sellers as it is buyers. Okay. So one thing to kind of add some context to it is, I had an open house. I had a listing in Bucktown a couple years ago, maybe about a $800,000 listing or so, or 650, I forget. And did an open house, call it a well executed open house. I was prepared, all the kind of stuff. The house got sold, all that good stuff. But that little chain turned into doing seven deals just from doing that one open house, right? So it was pretty much about $4 to $5 million in volume. And not to kind of bore you with kind of the details, right? But to kind of bounce you through it a little bit, right? Like I do the open at 2219 Wabansia, right? Their place goes under contract. So this is a bit of a stretch, but then they can buy their new house on Moffett, right? Now at that open house, I met a buyer that lost out on 2219. So what I did was I got that contact information. I did some circle prospecting, and then I found them in the identical building that wasn't on the market yet, the address over. They bought 2223 West Wabansia. Now they bought it, but they had a place to sell. So I sold their place at 1620 Oakley. Now, when I was listing 1620 Oakley, right, I met the buyers. I met a new lead, right? And they had to sell 1670 Claremont. So we sold 1670 Claremont, and then they bought 2310 St. Paul. Well, however the connection is somehow I met a neighbor, and then that person bought 2320, and then we sold their place on Lincoln, right? So my point is, and you don't need to get kind of caught up in the actual addresses, is it can be a bit of a chain reaction, right? If you just do one good open house, don't even think about that particular lead, right? It can really, really, really spiral into several deals. If you stay after it, you get listings, you do open houses. And you did one open house and it was about $5 million in volume, which is a pretty good year. Now, every open house doesn't turn into that, but that's kind of that is a real life example, right? And then the idea is, right, was that just 7 transactions? No, it wasn't, because now you've got 7 happy clients, right, to get referrals from. So at any time here, guys, if you want to just kind of unmute yourself, ask some questions, I'd love to make this kind of interactive the whole way. Like, I don't want to just talk the whole time. So fire in there, unmute yourself, ask some questions, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So then, as we're kind of like scrolling down here, that's just a real life example, right? One of the things that you want to think about is there are a lot of activities that you can do leading into your open house, right? So when you have a seller, right, a seller not only wants you to often do open houses and things like that to help drive, traffic to their listing, right? But you want to do a bunch of activities, or at least one activity that the seller thinks is really for them, but it's for you. It's for you to find more buyer leads. So for example, right, if you have an open house, you can do circle prospecting around an open house, right? Circle prospecting, for anybody who doesn't know, is if you're, pick that Bucktown example, right? 1620 Oakley, one of those addresses. You could get the 500 closest numbers to 1620 Oakley, right? And then you call them and you say things like, hey, we have a new listing, 1620 Oakley. We've got open house Saturday, open house Sunday. Do you know anybody that's kind of like looking to move in the neighborhood kind of thing, right? And then most times they say no, right? But what you're doing there is you're acting like you're trying to drive people to the open house. But then what so many people do is they then hang up the phone and they're done, right? But that's not the point of this call. People are going to come to an open house or not. Everybody's got the internet, right? So what the point is to keep that person on the phone long enough. So you say, so how long have you been in Bucktown? What's your story, right? Are you guys been there a while? Do you like the neighborhood? And most times they're like, yeah, I'm good. I don't have anybody. They hang up, right? But the point of that call is not to get them to send anybody to the open house. It's so you can ask them a real estate related question. And maybe they say, well, actually, we need to sell our place. That would be amazing. Well, actually, we're renting. We don't actually have any interest in 1620 Oakley, but we're starting to get into the home hunting, so, the home search, right? That would be a great thing out of that conversation. So if you're going to do that, don't think the point of that call is to get people to go to the open house. Your seller might think that, and that's perfectly fine. You're doing it for your own good. Well, you're multitasking, right? But you're doing it to have new conversations with new people. So that's one thing that you can do leading into an open house. You could do it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, at any time, right? The office can get us numbers. Your team might have numbers for you. You can do door knocking, right? You could set up for an open house at 12 o'clock on Saturday, and from 10 to 12 or 11 to 12, you create a little flyer and you go and you knock on some doors and you hang that. You put your contact information. If somebody answers, invite them to the open house. They probably don't want to come, but then you have the same conversation. You collect information, right? You're following that, right? So these are things that you can do. Door hangers, all the social media stuff that we're doing, right? Again, it's not to have people come to the open house. It's so you can have somebody raise their hand. It's marketing for yourself, right? That's what you're doing. You're out there marketing. So somebody says, well, no, I hate Bucktown, but we're actually thinking about looking in Lakeview. That's amazing, right? That, or whatever neighborhood or whatever city. Okay. Then you can certainly call your network, do the same kind of thing, right? Let them know, hey, we have a new listing. Do you have a new blah, blah, blah? You're calling your network, same thing. It's a touch. And then when we do thank you notes, a lot of times is when we're doing the open house, we have handwritten notes. So one thing is when you go to an open house, go there with all your materials, right? Whatever you think you're going to take to help wow the potential buyer, right? Your new client. So you might take market stats, something on your team. Obviously, you're going to take MLS sheets and the marketing and things like that, but you're going to bring information that helps you stand out, right? That's what you want to do. You want to bring information that when you're having a conversation with somebody, they think of you as a resource. In addition to that, one thing that we do on our team is nobody, if we all are doing what we're supposed to, never goes to an open house without a stack of note cards. Because that way, one of two things. If you're in there and you've got nobody that comes for 2 hours, you write 10 handwritten notes, right? And that is a really, really good use of your time. So always have a lead generating activity with you at an open house, because that way you won't walk out of there and be like, man, nobody came. That was such a waste of time. No, have something, ideally have a hot spot, and go there and be like, if somebody comes to this open house, it's great, but it's like forced lead gen for 2 hours or an hour and a half. Okay. And then that way, if nobody shows up, no big deal. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? It was great. Nobody came, but I got 15 handwritten notes followed up to my buyers, my sellers, my clients, my people. That was a really good use of time. If I was sitting on my couch doing whatever, I wouldn't have done that. Right. So always bring yourself another activity. And then what we do is with the thank you notes is if you're like in an 8-unit building, we always write a note the day of the open house, or try to, or at some point during the course of the listing, if you do a few, and write a little note and like slide it under the door of the other unit owners. Be like, hey there, I've got an open house day from, Saturday from 10 to 12. I just wanted to introduce myself. Thanks for bearing with us while we get, Sarah and Chris's place sold. If you have any questions, swing by, you want to check it out. But I just want to say thank you for, accommodating while people are coming in and out as we're trying to get their place sold, right? So then, first of all, they're gonna be like, wow, that's a really good agent, right? That was pretty good. So if they have any interest in selling, they're gonna remember that you're a good agent. Maybe they swing down, maybe they don't, but we try to do that on most of our open houses, and we get really good response from that. People pop in and say, oh my gosh, that was so nice. You're not a bother at all. And then you have whatever conversation you're trying to have. So these are all the things that you can do. And now, by the way, you don't have to do all of these. That would be cumbersome. That's a lot of activities. Okay. But maybe there's one that resonates with you where you're like, you know what? I love being face-to-face. I'm going to do some door hangers or some door knocking. I like that. The weather's nice. I'm going to walk around, learn the neighborhoods. That's what I want to do. Cool. Maybe you like the thank you notes under the doors at the, for the other unit owners. Maybe your thing's going to be about social media and all that kind of stuff. But just don't forget that the point of why you're doing this is to get buyer leads. We'll tell our seller we're doing it to drive traffic to the open house, but that's not really why you're doing that. People will come or they won't come. Okay. Any questions on that stuff, or any thoughts or anything that I'm not thinking of that could drive some traffic? Anybody? Good? Okay. All right. So, all right. Again, like I said, this is just as much about listings. Okay.
Hey, Kevin, quick question for you.
Yeah, you got it.
Do you ever, if it's slow, do you ever just sit outside and try to pull people in?
Yeah, I've done that.
I know it takes a lot of gumption, but.
Yeah, you know what I've done a little bit? We did a couple, is like, if you've got a Lakeview listing, we've done a couple around Cubs games, when everybody's walking by. So we've done that. Sometimes like a 5 to 7 open house is something different. Yeah, I've been out there just sometimes because you're freaking bored, and you're out there and you've got a blazer on. Everybody knows what I'm doing, right? I'm the one guy not in shorts kind of thing, enjoying my Saturday. So, yeah. So I do it, Brian, but like, I'm not really trying to get them in there, but like, I'm just trying to have some conversation. Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, you got it. Okay. All right. So now we are like day of the open house, right? You've done all the things. So one thing here is this whole kind of my whole spiel, or how I had success in open houses. And just to kind of back up, just so kind of anybody new that knows, I've been in Chicago in real estate a little more than 5 years. I moved from New York to Chicago about 5 years ago, and I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have any business, didn't really know many people in Chicago. And so open houses were my thing. So I just did, 3 and 4 a weekend, and I did it for about a year, as many as I could, because one, it's free. So minus a little bit of printing or whatever, and some Scotch tape, it's completely free. The Zillow leads are not free. Other things are not free. Right? Open houses are basically free. So that was why I liked it. And Secondly, I just did a lot better face to face. Like I wasn't the type of person that was going to call a bunch of for sale by owners and cancels and expireds. You can absolutely do that, but that wasn't really me. So I wanted to get face to face. So I did tons and tons of these. Now, my spiel is based off the fact that I didn't know anything, right? I didn't know anything about Chicago, like at all, right? These first couple open houses, the dumb things that I said were like unbelievable. People would say things like, well, what is the border between Lincoln Park and Lakeview? And I would have no idea. I would say something stupid like, well, it's kind of subjective, depends who you ask. I'm like, no, it's not. It's diversity. Like, you need to know that, Kevin. But I didn't know it. So my biggest fear was somebody would ask me, how long have you been in real estate? How many places have you sold? Blah, 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 blah. If you're younger, somebody might be like, how young are you? How old are you? That kind of stuff, right? So that was my biggest fear. So my strategy was to do everything that I could so they would never ask me those questions. They wouldn't ask me like, how many places have you sold in Bucktown? I'm like, where the hell's Bucktown? Bucktown is where is that? Where is that? That kind of thing, right? So when you are thinking about materials, just so you're not staring at a screen the whole time, when you're thinking about materials to take to the open house, bring the basics, listing sheet, sign-in sheet. By the way, my sign-in sheet never says, are you working with an agent? I'm not even going to give them a chance to put it on there, right? So it's not even on there.
Why is that? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, because everybody's working with an agent until they meet an agent that they like better. So I'm not really going to give them a chance to be like, because they all mark yes. It's like when I walk into, I don't know, pick a store, Bloomingdale's, and the person says, hey, do you need any help with anything? I immediately say, no, I don't need any help with anything. But of course I do. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And then 20 minutes later, after I've wandered around and I can't find whatever I'm looking for, then I ask the person, right? So, but if they made me sign in right away, do you need help with the customer service person? I would say no, but I did. So I don't even give them that chance. Now, of course, if in conversations they mention a name, they talk about their agent, they know who their agent's name. I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, but I'm just not giving them a chance to make it any harder for me than it already is.
Do you ever ask up front, right? So, because I like that a lot. I think we should take that column off of ours too.
Yeah.
But then, if we did that, then do you ever just ask, are you working with an agent?
I do. And I ask as we're walking up the stairs, is how I typically do it. And I'll get to that in a sec.
Okay.
But the other thing is so what I finally did was all the materials that I brought are education based. So for example, our team has the buyer wheel that talks through all the steps of buying, right? Pre-approval, blah, 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 attorney review, inspection items, appraisals, all that kind of stuff. Like it's like the buyer wheel, right? We always print out 20 of those and we have that there. Because what you need to do is you need to make this not about the property, okay? Because statistically, these people are not interested in the property. So the worst thing just statistically, they're going to walk in and like, it's not enough, because only one person buys it, right? So if you spend your whole time talking about this property, how great it is, 2-bed, 2-bath, garage parking, all this storage, blah, blah, and they don't have interest in it, they're going to listen to you for a little bit, but you're just white noise to them because they don't have any interest in that property, right? So everything that I did was education based, right? Because I want to talk about everything except the property, okay? Because then when they go to the next open house, if I've actually educated them, right? And maybe this could have happened better for you, David, right? Had you educated this person or had that opportunity, it wouldn't have been about this guy or girl walking into the next open house, liking that property and maybe, clicking on Redfin and having them write an offer for them, right? They would have been, wow, that David that I met, he is sharp. He taught me about how the inspection period works. He talks to me about what happens in attorney review. He talks to me about the appraisal protection. He talked to me about this kind of stuff, the market stuff. Now you are helpful to that client wherever he or she looks, okay? You're actually a value add. So you got to make your script not about the property, okay? If they've got a lot of interest in the property and you can tell they might like it, well, then of course you answer those questions, right? You be a good, you do a good job, you answer those questions, you show them the storage, but that's not what your spiel should be about. So anyways, think of materials that you can take that a buyer would have interest in that has nothing to do with this particular property. One would be a document about the buying process, right? Another one would be like, as you come in, and I'm doing this a little bit out of order, like, hey, get yourself settled. By the way, like, I thought, I printed out a bunch of like Lincoln Park stats and the, kind of what the process is and whatever. Like, I thought this could be helpful for you. Or, I was on the active market and I actually have a list of 4 or 5 that aren't on the market that are kind of similar. I just brought that in case this wasn't the right one for you. I could show you that kind of stuff. You're giving them things that they don't have, because people will give you good contact information. They will put up with our emails. They'll take our phone calls if you're giving them something different. If you're calling to be like, hey, did you see that one on Southport came on? Well, they've got Redfin too, right? You're not, they've got Zillow too. You're not really differentiating yourself in a lot of ways. So the materials that I brought pretty quickly, because I was paranoid they would ask me about how many places I sold, start asking me neighborhood questions that I didn't know, right? I wanted to bring things that I could learn pretty quickly. It's not hard to learn how InfoSparks works and print out a couple graphs, median sales price, inventory, market time, all that kind of stuff, right? So when somebody says like, hey, like our place is selling fast, you don't say something like, yeah, they're selling fast. You're like, well, actually, I printed out a couple things. Yeah, the median market time in Lincoln Park right now for condos under 400 grand, it's like 19 days, whatever it is, right? That's something that they don't know, and it's not just a generic answer. So whatever it is, doesn't have to be all those things. Bring a couple things that can shift the conversation away from the property and about the process, because now you're a resource that you will travel with them as they kind of continue to search. Okay. So anyway, now you've done whatever you've done leading into it. You've brought some materials to help kind of separate yourself, because otherwise, if you're just a nice dressed guy or gal that knows about the property, they walk into, if they go from our house to Brian Moon's open house and everybody's the same, dressed nice, they're friendly, like, who differentiated each other, right? So you want to set yourself apart from other good agents as well, and it's knowledge-based stuff. Okay. So, all right. So now you've done all those things. All right. And now what do you do actually at the open house, right? You've set up your signs, all that kind of stuff. One thing you want to do is never, ever, ever buzz them in, right? What you want to do is you can use your MLS sheet. Ideally, you print up a better marketing piece than just the MLS sheet. And you say, open house from 12 to 2, call Kevin, right? And then what you do is do not buzz them in. So when you see them show up, right, and they buzz on the buzzer and you clearly have the sign, call David or whatever, they don't answer the door. Make them call you, okay? And they will. Some buzz, some will sneak through. You make them call you, right? Then you're walking down, of course, and so when they call, you're like, hello, you kind of act like you don't know what to talk about. They're like, hey, I'm here for the open house. Awesome. Who's this? And they're like, it's Mike. I'm like, hey, Mike, this is Kevin. I'll be right down. I'll let you in, right? And I run down the stairs, and my phone is littered with addresses that say things like Mike Racine, Mike Ashland, Mike Moffett, because I saved their first name and whatever street I met them on, right? So now I've got their number. So if they don't sign in, they give me bull crap information or whatever, I've at least got their phone number. Then as you're walking down and you're letting them in, do your cordial, whatever. Hey, how's it going? Then I always ask the question, this is where I dive into the agent, like, hey, did you guys have this one planned or were you just walking by? And I wait to see what they say, right? Because sometimes they say really, really valuable things. They're saying, oh yeah, we actually live in unit 1. Or we live next door and we're thinking about selling. We just kind of want to take a look at the thing. Like, that is amazing. Somebody's just raised their hand and told you that they're thinking about selling, right? They might, then this is where they say, oh yeah, our agent's busy. We just, he or she sent us. So that's cool. So at least I know that they've got an agent, but I'm not going to leave it at that. Then I always say, oh, cool. That's great. Yeah, you got it. Who's your agent? Who are you working with? Right. And I'm testing them, because one, if they can't come up with their agent's name, this relationship isn't very good. If they start saying, well, this wouldn't be the example, but if they're like, it's Mike at KW, where maybe Coldwell, yeah, what's his last name? Like, they literally do this, right? And you're like, well, this clearly isn't a very firm relationship. This guy can't be adding that much value to these people, right? But then if they say something like, and I'm not saying you're really stepping on toes, but you're going to kind of like let that marinate. That person, they deserve good service. And if they can't come up with their agent's name, it's not that good a service, right? Also, by the way, if you're sending clients to an open house, do the respect of texting the listing agent or or emailing them, hey, I'm jammed today. My buyers are coming to the open house from 12 to 2. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Right. Because if you write an offer for that buyer that you could make, you're in way better graces with the listing agent. And if by some chance they walk in there and they start like writing offers or who knows, you've protected yourself a little bit. And you're like, hey, Lee Marcus, I sent you a note that they were coming, kind of thing. I just couldn't make, you never got back to me, right? You're protecting your commission a little bit. Anyway, so I asked them as they're walking up the stairs. And then if they say, yeah, no, I'm working with Brian Moon at KW. He's doing whatever. He sent me over. Great, right? I'm going to give them the service that they want, but I'm not going to worry about converting them, right? I'm going to spend my time on other people because they said they have an agent. I knew who the agent was, or they came up with it. Seems like it's a good relationship. If there's 5 people in there at once, I need to know who to focus on. Okay. So now they get in there, and then the next thing there is, what am I doing here? Okay. So then they walk in. I do not ask them to sign in. Okay. I never ask them to sign in right away. So as soon as they walk in, you've added no value. If you ask them to sign in right now, your quality of information will be really low. Okay, because you've offered them nothing. Why do they want to sign in? So this one you get fake names and things like that, and bad phone numbers and all that stuff. So I never ask them to sign in right away. Really, what I do is I'm walking up the stairs and they're kind of getting there. I'm trying to see if there's some way to build a little bit of rapport. Okay, because people work with who they like, right? So when you meet somebody for the first time, this is just good real estate in general, right? Is you want to ask them questions or come off as relatable. All right. So the easiest one is you've just saved their phone number, right? And maybe it's a 734 area code. It tells you where your phone rings. Most times it tells you where the people are from, right? So I know 734, that's where I went to college, Ann Arbor. I'm like, oh wow, maybe this person went to Michigan. They're from Michigan. I'm from Michigan. They're like, oh, you from Michigan? I'm from Michigan. Okay, cool. Built a little bit of rapport. It's a San Francisco number. Like, oh, did you live in San Fran for a while? Or, what brings you to Chicago? Or like, maybe they tell you something, right? Then like, look at them. And like, this sounds ridiculous, but like, I'm a golf guy. So like, maybe they've got a golf logo on. I'm like, oh, have you played Conway Farms? Place is great. Or maybe they have like a cool pair of shoes, or maybe they're carrying a Dark Matter coffee. You're like, oh, I love Dark Matter. I live right by it. That kind of thing. You're just trying to build some level of rapport. And it's really important. So then later, when you do want their contact information, when you do want to expand this relationship, they're like, all right, David's a nice guy. He was pretty friendly, whatever seems normal, all that kind of stuff, right? Because people's guard will be up. So don't ask them to sign in right away. Then when they come in there, really my script is, hey guys, thanks for coming. There's a bunch of information on there. There's some stuff about the kind of the market, some market research you might find it's helpful, some off-market stuff. There's a little bit of kind of about like the whole process, but do your thing, check it out. Pretty self-explanatory place, 2 bed, 2 bath, garage parking. I got a bunch of information on the building. Let me know if you have any questions. And then step back and let them do their thing. And they will wander around and all that kind of stuff. And then if they have interest in that property, they'll start asking you questions. And then you answer. You do a good job for whatever listing agent. Yep, you tell them about the reserves, you tell them about all that kind of stuff. But chances are they're not going to like that one. It's not going to be a winner. Statistically, it's not the one for them, right? Then, you want to find an angle, right? Then when they come back to the kitchen or whatever, you need to ask something of value. You got to ask some questions, right? So you might ask them, so like, how long are you just getting started? You get yourself pre-approved yet? How's that going, right? And you listen to what they say. You ask a few questions, right? Then what you're trying to do is you're trying to get them, give them some kind of a hook based off of something that they don't know. Okay. So for example, if they're like, yeah, well, we're not pre-approved yet, we're thinking about getting going. Then a perfect question would be like, oh, great. Do you guys know if you're going to be a jumbo or a conventional loan? You just ask that. And they're like, well, we don't, what's the difference? So, well, a jumbo loan is, now, if it's a $150,000 property, that'd be a dumb question. But if it was a 650 or 7 or 8 or something like that, there's a chance that they could be a jumbo loan, right? And so you say something, they say, well, there's a difference, right? So a jumbo loan, the loan amount is $548,000. That's the loan amount. That's what makes it a jumbo. And the reason why I ask is if you land in a jumbo space, typically what you want to do is you want to make sure you talk to a big bank. And the reason why you want to talk to a big bank is this is how banks work, right? They've got a whole asset management side to their business. So what they'll do is typically a big bank will win on rates. They'll beat a guaranteed rate and a summit funding and a Pearl and things most times because they're going to do everything that they can to earn your business. And that's why their interest rates on jumbos with bigger banks tend to be better, because what they want to do is if you're getting a jumbo loan, they're working under the assumption that you have some amount of wealth. And they want to be able, because you're buying an expensive house, they want to be able to have the follow-up conversation of asset management. So that's literally how a big bank works. That's why their rates tend to be best. So love that you're pre-approved a guaranteed rate. That's great. If you land in the jumbo space, you might want to talk to somebody at a big bank like a Chase or a Wells. And you can give them the faster version of that, right? And I guarantee you they didn't know that. They didn't know that. Then the opposite is if they're conventional, like, oh no, we're going to be conventional. And you're like, okay, great, pre-approval. Oh, we're pre-approved through Chase. You're like, that's great. Typically when we're working with our client to do conventional loans, you probably want to avoid a big bank. You probably want to talk to Summit Funding, a guaranteed rate, a Pearl, somebody that's a pure lender, because if anything gets sticky with the loan, maybe they're not taking 10% of their reserves and putting it into the right operating account, or maybe they don't really have a budget in order kind of thing. When you're working with a big bank, there's a lot of red tape and deals fall apart at a higher rate. So if you do end up, it's great that you're pre-approved through Chase, but if you end up in a conventional space, you probably want to talk to like a pure mortgage broker as well, and then you see where that conversation goes, right? And then if they're like, okay, great, you're like, well, actually, like I've got a guy, you want me to make a connection, right? If they raise their hand for one of their resources, right? One of your resources, you're basically in, right? If they are willing to talk to one of your real estate attorneys ahead of time, talk to one of your lenders. I don't know if you said something like, hey, I've got 3 or 4 different inspectors that I trust. That's a pretty important part of it. Can I send you that information? Do you want to just kind of do a little resource? You might find a place in a month, 2 months, but you're gonna need that. If they raise their hand to any of your resources, you pretty much have them as a client. You're not going to lose them very often. Okay. So you're asking basically loaded questions, right? You're asking them questions that they don't know the answer to, and it's got nothing to do with the property, right? So if you're starting a conversation here that's going relatively well, where they're an information-based person, they want to know a little bit about things, then what I'll say is, I was like, guys, I've got this all in a document and, in a PDF, there's a lot of information. What's the best email for you? I'll send it to you. You guys can get on your day. I don't want to bore you kind of thing, but like, this is really helpful stuff, right? They will give you now real contact information. Okay. They'll say, yeah, that's great, right? They are going to sign in, or at the very least, after you've taught them a little bit of stuff, right? Even if they're not raising their hand for any of the things that you're offering them, when you then say, hey guys, before you leave, do you mind signing in? The sellers just need to know who's there. That's really all that I say, that, who came. They will sign in at a way higher rate. Like they'll sign in, but their quality of information will be much higher because they've been here for 10 or 15 minutes. I wasn't pushy. I built a little rapport. I gave them a little bit of knowledge. You kind of got to be a jerk at that point to be like, nope, absolutely not. joeblow@gmail.com. Go jump in a lake at AOL, that kind of stuff. Like you'd have to be a jerk to not give you real information at that point. So that's when I ask for contact information. Either I go generic and it's like, hey, the seller needs to know who's here. Do you mind signing in kind of thing? Or if they're interested in any of these conversations, they want that information. If they're serious, they want that information. But if you're like, hey, can I set you up on a search, so you don't miss out on any properties, that's not that helpful because we can all search on whatever. Okay. So you want to ask questions or bring up questions that they don't know answers to that are about the process, right? If somebody says something like, oh yeah, we're just getting started, we still have to sell our place. Perfect question. Like, hey, have you run numbers with your lender, right? Do you know if you've got the ability to put in a non-contingent offer? By the way, you better know what you're talking about when you say what's a contingent offer, what's a non-contingent offer, right? You need to know what you're talking about. So if you're like, hey, do you have the ability to put in a non-contingent offer? And you get really smart people, they're like, well, what do you mean? So, well, this is how it works, right? This is all hypothetical. So you've got a $400,000 place. You've got $300,000 left, left on the mortgage. You've got $300,000. If you're going to go buy a $800,000 place and you're planning on putting down $100,000 or whatever, a bank has to look at both your mortgages. You've got 300 on the one, you're looking to buy a place, because they'll say things like, well, we have plenty for the down payment. Well, that's not how it works. You've got to have enough income that supports the $300,000 mortgage and the $700,000 mortgage without having to sell. So you've got $1 million worth of mortgages in there that chances are a lot of people don't make enough income that they can get $1 million mortgage, right? So when you ask them about contingency, that's the perfect selling one. Well, did you guys even find out if you can buy before sell? They'll say, well, yeah, we've got plenty for the down payment. I'm like, no, that's cool. What you should do is you should talk to a lender, right? Because, I'm not going to get in your business, but they're going to look at the total loan, what you owe, what the new mortgage is, and then they're going to run some numbers. And you're probably good to buy without selling, but that's your most important thing. Have you guys done that? And then chances are they're like, no, or whatever. Then you're like, well, listen, no obligation on my end, but like, I've got my lender at G-Rate is so great. Like, he'll run these numbers for you in 5 minutes just to give you a game plan. Do you want me to make a connection? They'll be like, okay, yeah, we can do that. Right. That's amazing. Then you can have that conversation, right? You can ask them questions like, hey, so has anybody explained to you how the appraisal contingency works? So my other David, not my new David, my Brian Moon David. Sorry, what's your last name? Davis, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I was just saying, appraisal contingency. Tell me how that works.
How an appraisal contingency works?
Yeah. Like,
Okay.
what's an appraisal contingency? How does it work?
Means that the property has to appraise out at purchase price, right? And then if it doesn't, then the buyer is liable to cover the difference. Is that right?
Maybe. Where is it in the contract? Do you remember seeing? Do you remember where it is in the contract?
Well, you have to add a rider for it.
Yeah. So it's not in the contract.
Right. You have to
So-
add a rider.
So this is tricky, and I'm not expecting you to answer that perfect, right? The point is you've been in real estate for 6 months and you kind of get how the appraisal works, right? So they're going to have no idea how the appraisal works, right?
Right.
So you can say something like, hey, has somebody explained to you how the appraisal contingency works? How it's not in the contract, but the attorney adds it for you. That's how it works. They add it in attorney review. It's not in the contract. And they'll be like, well, what do you mean? Like, so it's not in the contract. And by the way, this is why you want to work with a really good real estate attorney. Have you figured out who your real estate attorney is going to be? And they're like,
I use,
no.
oh, sorry.
Right. But the
Oh,
point
you're
is that is something that the buyer gets last. They don't even hardly know that they need a real estate attorney. You're telling them you've got a couple resources. And this is where, if they're intrigued in that part of it, you can say something like, well, listen, no skin up my nose, no obligation. Do you want to talk to one of our attorneys just so you can kind of understand how the contract works? Because it's going to happen pretty fast. And if they're like, all right, yeah, do you mind connecting me? There's no way that your attorney is going to let you lose that lead. They are going to help you. And that's, by the way, that's what a good attorney does. That's what a good lender does, a good inspector, all those things. They'll take a loose lead and help you firm it up. So if you have a real estate attorney that wouldn't, trade a couple of emails or jump on a 2-minute call with a prospective buyer before you're even under contract, you need to be working with a new real estate attorney. Okay. Because you need to use these people to convert leads to help take a soft lead and firm it up. Okay. So anyways, you could ask about that, and you could get it. So, well, what this means is it's not in the contract, but if we buy this, we go under contract for 400. If it appraises at 400 above, we pay 400. All is good. Right. But sometimes it comes in a little bit lower, right? Maybe it comes in at 390. What the appraisal contingency does is it protects you that you don't have to pay $1 above the appraised price unless you choose to. Okay. So if it comes in at 390, what we would do is, first thing is we're going to bluff. We're going to go back to the sellers and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry it didn't appraise. My clients, they don't have 10 more grand to put down. They don't have it, so we got to figure this out, and we bluff, and maybe they're like, you know what? We were happy with our price. We'll sell it for 390. Or what really ends up happening is you renegotiate it, right? But the point, what you're trying to tell the buyer is, listen, like, I bet this market feels hectic, right? You see places go on the market Friday, they sell on Saturday, blah, blah. Your most important thing here is your appraisal contingency. And you need a good attorney that crafts it properly, that protects you. So if by chance we get in like a bidding war, now you start talking to we's, if we start, getting in a bidding war, like, you need that protection. That's pretty important, right? Anyways, I've got this whole document that explains it all, that talks you through that. Like, do you guys want to look at some of this ahead of time? They're like, okay, right? So those are the types of questions that I'm asking, right? You talk about mortgage, a mortgage contingency, an appraisal contingency, who you pre-approved through. A little bit about tax prorations. You can talk about your resources, all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to, now you can't talk about all these things in 5 minutes in a kitchen, but I'm trying to read the people, and I'm trying to make my value nothing to do with the actual property, because they already know about it, and chances are they're just trying to leave. Okay. But if we talk about a little bit of it and they raise their hand for any of the resources, or when they leave, there's no way they're not like, oh, that Kevin was actually pretty helpful, because I've had so many instances where I'll do an open house, not so many, probably 5 in my career, where I did an open house at a property at Saturday at 11 a.m. and I'll get a call at 5 p.m. that night, and that buyer went and saw a different property and doesn't have an agent. I didn't go with him or her, and they call me, say, hey, we love this place. Can you help us write an offer? And I didn't even show it to them. But they realized that they fell in love with it, but they realized they want somebody on their team, right? They're smart enough to realize, well, I don't want just a listing agent to get both sides of it or not really help me, right? And I probably 5 times, I never even showed them a property. They call me back, wrote a contract, and they're your client. And maybe you don't get that particular one, you lose out, but you got that client now. Okay, so it can work that quickly. All right, so you're doing all these things. You're doing all these things in the open house to try to get them to say yes to one of your resources, to get their information. But you're only going to get 1 or 2 people in an open house that are really that engaged, right? Now, hopefully they've signed in and you've got at least their email address, because you've been good, you've been sharp, you've added value, that you can get the real contact information. So then if I do an open house on Saturday or on Sunday, before that day comes to an end on the Saturday, I'm going to text everybody that came, and say, hey, Ben, thanks again for coming to the open house at 1255 Roscoe. If you have any questions about that, let me know, but I just want to touch base. Is there anything you need from me? Right? And you send it, whatever you want to say, just something really generic or whatever, and see what they say. And then a lot of times they're like, how'd you get my number? You're like, oh, I just saved it when you called. So, in case you needed something, no, oh, okay. And you kind of like trick them. Sometimes people are like, oh, that's pretty good. Good job. But then what you're trying to do here is your whole goal is to set a second face-to-face. And this is where, David, what you maybe not could have done better, but had you been able to set one other second face-to-face or one other stream of interaction with you before that next weekend came up, you wouldn't have lost them, right? And now you could have done everything right and not lost this person, right? But if you just got one more face-to-face or one more Zoom or one more, what, who's your guy at G-Rate or who's your guy at Pearl or whatever kind of thing, you've got it. You wouldn't have lost them, okay? So what you're trying to do here is you're now trying to set an appointment, all right? And your appointment is really just another real estate conversation. So now you've got these people, right? So you send a generic text that first night, see if there's anything I need, anything I can answer, all that kind of stuff, see where it goes. Then assuming you don't hear anything, right? I'm going to send them an email on day 2. Hey, hey, thanks again. If it's on Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to send them another email. Say, hey, thanks again for coming, blah, blah, blah. I attach a bunch of information on our team, all that kind of stuff. So anything you can help, anything else I can answer, anything like that, right? And I send them some resources. And now now assuming if I get interaction, if they say something to you, now just be your normal self. If they say, well, actually, how does the real estate attorney work? You can tell them, and then you help them with that resource. You can help them with who the lender is. You could send them inspection, that kind of stuff, right? Then you just, if they engage with you, then you just go at a normal pace. If you are to now Wednesday of that following week and they are yet to engage, all right, this is where I take every single person that I've got an email for and I put them into an MLS search. And that works as my drip campaign, okay? So we're on to Wednesday. They haven't engaged. They didn't engage the day of the open house. They didn't engage on Monday. Didn't engage on Tuesday, right? Now I'm midweek. I'm going to put them in a MLS search. And what I'll do is I'll just make it based off of whatever property they looked at. And you say, hey, Beth, I know we keep missing each other. That's what I say, missing each other. No, I'm not missing them. They just don't call me. Hey, I know we keep missing each other. Thanks again for popping into our listing at Oakley. I didn't want you to miss anything, so I set you up on a search for all the 2-bed, 2-bath, under 425 in Bucktown. I thought that would be helpful. And then also I'm going to monitor the private stuff, and I'll send you a couple that aren't on the market yet. If you want to make any tweaks or any other neighborhoods, just let me know. And so if you do 10 of those, right, what's going to happen is like 3 people are going to unrespond right away. And that's fine. Doesn't mean that they don't want to ever work with you, but they're just going to unsubscribe. Then somebody right off the bat is going to raise their hand and immediately wants to engage with you. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's so helpful. Can you add in Lincoln Park and Lakeview? We're not really married to Bucktown. That is awesome. You basically set an appointment, and then that search is up and running. And then the other 4 or 5, you're not going to hear anything from, right? They're going to just run. Maybe somebody unsubscribes eventually, all that kind of stuff. But mark my words, like 2 months will go by and somebody will text you or call you or email you, and they'll say, David, I am so sorry. Thank you so much for sending me all those properties. We are busy and all this kind of stuff. Is there any chance we can see these 2 this weekend? And you're like, that's the best feeling, because you thought it was dead. You completely figure out that your MLS search was up and running. The other value in an MLS search, right, is you can see if they've opened it, all that kind of stuff. You can look at how often they're looking at it, that kind of stuff. So if by Wednesday of the middle of that next week, if I've gotten no engagement, I do 2 things. They go into our regular CRM, so they get our regular 33 touch because they're a Met, and then I set them up on an MLS search, and I send them the email, giving them the chance to kind of like tweak their search, or or whatever, or engage in the conversation. And that's kind of the follow-up information, right?
Quick question for you, Kevin.
Yeah, go for it.
On that last slide, that whole plan, right? Day 1, day 2, day 3. Were you saying at the beginning that you only do this with the people who like sort of engaged with you at the open house, or do you do this with only the people who said and you kind of confirm they're not working with the serious agent, or is this just everybody?
So if somebody tells me they're working with an agent, I believe them. I'm going to leave them alone.
Okay.
If somebody's a complete jerk, like literally a jerk, I'm like, I'm not going to bother this guy. Well, that's fine, right? If I have some type of engagement at the open house, right? Like I'm going to make it specific, right? Mm-hmm. If we were talking a little bit about like the buying process and how it works, whatever, I'm going to tailor something to them. Hey, Mike, I know you had to run, I attached the doc about kind of like the whole buyer wheel, how it goes. Do you have time like later this week to chat for 2 minutes, do a Zoom? I want to kind of learn a little bit more about you, right? Like I'm going to tailor that communication if there's been some kind of back and forth.
Sounds good.
The MLS searches are for somebody that's given me nothing. Okay. I'm just throwing out a whatever, a unicorn. I'm just giving it a shot kind of thing. They've responded to nothing. They weren't a jerk, but I've gotten nothing. I just don't want to completely lose them. Then they go on the MLS strip and I see what I got. But if I have like a real conversation with somebody and they're just a little slow to respond or whatever, I'm not just throwing them on a generic MLS search. This is like, might as well give it a shot. Can't hurt. Because I want them seeing me every other day or something like that. Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions kind of like anything open house related, kind of the day of, the follow-up, any of that? Okay. And then, so really what you want to just kind of really remember here is all you're doing here is trying to create METs. You're just trying to create a MET database, right? So if anybody that walks into an open house, they're a MET. Some are good, some are not, some pan out, some don't, but you are growing your MET database just like you would with like through your friends and family. Open houses are a really easy way to do that. And then number 2 is you're running some version of a 33 touch. And that's reminding them that you're in real estate. That's all you're doing. But an open house lead, you can't just have them get 1 email a month or 1 mail or something like that. You got to be more proactive. And that's what the MLS search accomplishes, or whatever your system is to follow up with them. And that's really all it is, because your people are your money. That's really all you're trying to do. Grow your database, consistently remind them in real estate. So anyway, the two big takeaways that you should have here is this is a numbers game. You have to do a lot of these. Don't just do 3 or 4 in a month or 2 in a weekend and get bummed out. It's a numbers game. And if you convert anywhere around 5%, you've done quite well. And my second main piece of advice is make your spiel not about the property. Make it education based, make it about something that they don't know. And now you've got a chance to actually have them remember you. Otherwise, you're just a nice guy or gal that is probably going to be just like you hosting the next open house. Cool. Okay, guys, it's 2:00. Unless anybody has any questions, I will let you get out there.
Thanks, Kevin. That was great.
Okay,
Hey,
guys.
Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Yeah,
Thank you
Can
so
I ask
much.
one question, Kevin?
yeah, go for it.
Hey, what do you know, I've got thousands of people, from years of doing this in
Yeah.
my database. Do you ever take these people out? You just get rid of them? Like, I have no idea that guy is, and how do
Yeah,
you track that? Or
Honestly,
you just leave them and you're like,
we do eventually, because like every start of the month, Molly on our team prints us our sphere list, our Met list, that we have to go through. And like, if I've got my Met list and I don't even know who that is, now I've got it tagged in there somewhere that it's an open house lead. If it's an open house lead from 2019 and I've got nothing, I'm either not touching them with my quarterly touches, to be completely honest, or I'm just removing them so my list isn't overwhelming. At some point you narrow it down a little
Yeah.
bit. An open house lead from 4 years ago probably isn't.
how about 16 years ago?
Yeah, it's probably time to let that guy go.
But they might sell something.
They could.
Okay.
They could. Can't hurt. You can't hurt.
I know.
There's no harm in keeping them in there.
Yeah.
But I clean it up from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nicole, did you have a question in there?
I was going to ask you something, Kevin. Do you hold your team to like a set of standards, of specific standards for every open house? Not necessarily how many they do per the month, but like what they need to like have this many signs up, have balloons, have like what.
No, we don't hold them to a standard. So first of all, they have to do 6 a month. That's their standard. And sometimes that's tough with inventory. They just need to make the effort to do 6 a month, because if we don't have enough listings, selling too fast, or, open houses are a little hard to come by sometimes when places sell fast. No, we don't have like a hard and fast rule, other than like, I give them options. They got to do something, right? It's for their own good, right? That's why it's easy. I don't need to tell them what to do. I just need them to believe that if they don't do this, it's a waste of their time. So, they are very motivated to do one of those things, to bring the note cards, to door knock, to do some social media, to take some balloons, whatever, because like I convince them that there's value in it for them. So that way I don't have to tell them to do it. So we give them flexibility to, if you don't want to do anything, that's okay. But chances are you're not going to get many leads if you don't do anything,
Yeah.
But we don't have it mandated. Maybe I
Okay.
should. Yeah.
And then second question, do you sign in, this is just logistics, but do you have sign-ins on paper? Or do you have like the command login page?
I just do paper.
You do, okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Yeah, and people use iPads, all sorts of things. I don't think it's really, whatever. I just use paper.
Okay.
Yep. Because I like writing notes sometimes on it, like as soon as they leave. It's just easy for me. Blue shirt, had the dog, from Iowa, something, because I'm trying to follow up. I'm trying to continue the potential rapport that I built.
Yeah.
It's just quicker for me to take notes. Yeah. Okay, y'all, get out there, sell something. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Kevin.
See ya.
Thanks, Kevin.